MCU and DCEU can step aside now because the Monsterverse is the new in thing. The numbers never lie, as can be seen in the way Godzilla Kong is lighting up the box office all over the world. So I want to celebrate this victory with the top 35 giant monster fight scenes in the movies. This film was a pleasant surprise, and I'm glad 2018's Rampage managed to give us a somewhat faithful adaptation of the OG source material. It takes a special kind of film that makes The Rock look small both literally and figuratively, which is exactly why I'm covering the final fight with George, Ralph and Lizzy. So to sum it up, it's basically a giant gorilla taking on a flying wolf and a freaking dino croc, but this scene is filled with so much badass content that you just can't ignore it. Sure, it was a bit funny to see how Ralph got eaten up by Lizzy when they were chilling with each other not too long ago. Oh yeah, and instead of jumping at George, who's only a few meters away, the wolf decides to run back, scale a building, enter another building, run through the other building, and crash through the building to fly towards his opponent. Yes, Ralph, very efficient. Of course, the highlight was watching George take on Lizzy, which, if we're being honest here, was pretty much the dollar store version of Godzilla vs. Kong. Either way, it was a brilliant final fight between two apex fighters, and the final nail to the coffin, or in this case I, was an epic way for George to claim victory. Well, I'm not too sure about how much you enjoy watching these types of movies, but trust me, some of them are pretty badass. Take the final battle between Gamera and Iris, for example. Nobody's going to remember this movie for its special effects, but that's not to say that it doesn't deserve any praise. This whole fight is so emblematic of Gamera as a character, you know. Ayano is responsible for unleashing Iris, so she was driven by anger and a thirst for revenge which blinded her. But when she realizes what she's done and is absorbed by Iris, she's at her lowest of lows with no hope in sight. But then in a flash of pure white light, Gamera literally punches a hole into the embodiment of her imprisoning despair and rips her out, sacrificing his own body to do so, while still being gentle enough not to crush her. He destroys this terrible evil and saves an innocent soul all at once. This is what makes Gamera so special. He's the hero who'll never stop fighting, the eternal flame of hope pushing back against the darkness of cruelty and despair. He's the guardian of the universe.
Killing each other.
Okay, so this is a Godzilla movie, but the focus isn't on the king of the monsters. Instead, we get to appreciate the beauty of the film's CGI artists and their hard work. I know Rodan lost all his battles in this movie, but his introduction was pretty epic. The way he terrorized those fighter jets was a mark of dominance because, let's be honest, Bro could have ended them at any time, but he still chose to mess around first. Of course, his fun was cut short when he had to finally deal with King Ghidorah, and even though the battle didn't last long, I'll still give credit to Rodan for trying to stand up to the three-headed dragon. Like, he may not have had a chance in the first place, but he still went for it and gave Ghidorah something of a fight. The way Rodan gets zapped towards the end and fell off the sky looked pretty tragic, which goes to show how they nail the visuals for this film. Well, we all know about Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, especially the latter, who's pretty much like a non-MCU version of the Hulk. However, in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the dude meets an opponent twice or even thrice his size when he comes across Dante, who drinks way too much of that monster potion. Damn, he became that big after spilling more than half the tube. Imagine how big he would have got if he drank it like a normal person.
Peach syrup, tinned peach syrup. What a drink!
Anyway, the fight that follows is a sheer display of brute strength with both monster men throwing their best punches at each other. Sure, Mr. Hyde was getting his butt handed to him, and that too with a bit of support from Captain Nemo. Either way, it was still an impressive battle with Hyde being able to fight back and even cause damage to Dante, who for the longest time didn't look like anything would take him down. It was eventually the collapse of the building that ended him, but I'd like to believe that this battle with Hyde managed to slow him down a little bit. You know, when 2015's Jurassic World came out, it took the world by storm and everyone was celebrating the fact that our beloved dinosaur theme park was finally back in business. Now that almost 9 years have passed since its release, I can only remember it as a cash grab for the franchise, coupled with tons of product placement. Either way, the one thing nobody can deny is we got loads of dino fights, and we have the Indominus Rex to thank for that. She really woke up and chose violence from the beginning, right till the very end of the film. You could probably call her the dinosaur version of Nicolas Cage. Now her first battle with dinos was against the Ankylosaurus right after the attack on the gyrosphere, and even though it was short, she managed to quickly communicate how much of a badass she was. Never mind the fact that she couldn't get through the outer shell of her opponent, she simply slashed down the Ankylosaurus' legs and snapped it as if it was Gwen Stacy's back. That sure would have given Andrew Garfield some PTSD. I know this movie was meant to be extra and stuff, but the final battle between Godzilla and Monster X kind of felt like high stakes than when the entirety of the Avengers tried to take down Thanos. This was the ultimate showdown between two supreme kaijus, and the fight was nothing short of spectacular. Normally, the King of the Monsters doesn't have any problems taking down his opponents, but Monster X was a whole other breed of antagonist. Forget the fact that he can use atomic blasts and is just as big as Godzilla. Bro can use martial arts as well. Look at some of these moves. Bruce Lee would have been so proud. The placement of the encounter against the backdrop of the ruins of Tokyo really enhanced the fight, so it felt very satisfying when Godzilla took the W. Oh yeah, Monster X even had one last trick up his sleeve by transforming into Kaiser Ghidorah, but Godzilla made sure to literally blast his foe into space. Yeah, that was a lot to take in. Just because a film is animated doesn't mean it shouldn't qualify for this list. Just look at the Golden Gate grapple scene from Monsters vs. Aliens. You've got Ginormica, B.O.B., The Missing Link, Dr. Cockroach, and Insectosaurus all teaming up against an alien robot in a pretty thrilling sequence.
You're doing great!
I'm doing everything!
Not for long. Come on, you guys. Let's take this thing down.
There's no intense fighting as such, because bro simply got his circuits messed up, but the stakes were pretty high if you consider all those innocent civilians on the bridge. Ginormica was really doing all she could to stop the robot's attacks, but I did find it funny that her name was supposed to signify her size, even though she wasn't even a fraction of her opponent's towering stature. Sure, there were some comedy bits in between the fights, but it's also important to note that we were all hooked to our seats right until the very end when the robot crashed into the bridge and got its massive head chopped off. That's a pretty brutal way to go for a kid's movie, isn't it?
Help me!
Sorry, I was just staring at this bird over there.
We have to get these people off the bridge!
Got it.
No! Move the dividers!
Oh, yeah, you're right. My bad.
People had high hopes for this film, but unfortunately it failed to deliver and became a box office bomb all over the world except China. Anyway, I'm not here to talk about film marketing, I want to cover giant monster fights. The duel between Rodan and Gul'dan was supposed to be an honourable one, but the latter of the two made sure that wouldn't be the case. It was actually shaping up to be a really good fight, as neither warrior was looking as if they'd go down easily. Even after Rodan took his blows, he was ready with a counter and was able to give Gul'dan a serious run for his money, but then Bro violated the rules by using fell magic and stole a victory, which is actually a huge L. He didn't even care for what his own people were telling him and took down 3 of them for good measure. I don't know about anything else, but this dude was clearly written to be a villain. Man, if CGI could look this good back in 2007, I really don't know what's going wrong with modern Hollywood.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
Well, at least I can enjoy a couple of polar bears fighting with each other right to the death, so that's something, isn't it? No, seriously, the battle between Eorek and Ragnar was an impressive piece of work, especially if you look at how fluid their movements are. Eorek was clearly the underdog, or should I say underbear, because the size difference in itself was pretty distinct. From the looks of it, I was scared that Eorek might just meet an unfortunate end, but he totally turned the tables with a brutal jaw attack that I was surprised to see. I mean, this wasn't an R-rated movie, so to show Eorek ripping off Ragnar's lower mouth was a pleasant surprise. You could even call it jaw-dropping. Get it? Because he took his jaw out? You get that, don't you? Okay, that may have been a little bit extra.
That is all. Has who is your king?
Nothing hits better than a fight between two elite monsters, especially the ones in high demand. Godzilla and King Kong have both become cherished by the fans, which is why their films are doing pretty well at the box office. Now, the first encounter between them was right in the middle of the Tasman Sea, and yes, even though Godzilla was the clear winner, I'll admit that Kong gave him a good fight. Bro didn't care that he was up against the king of the monsters, he still wanted that smoke and gave it his all. The most hilarious thing though was seeing Kong fling F-35 fighter jets at Godzilla as if they were ninja knives or something. I don't think he understands that these things cost upwards of $100 million? Well, I suppose you can't put a price on epic battles, and most definitely not on what looks like it's going to become one of the most popular team-ups in modern cinema.
This isn't about us.
I'm going to be honest with you, I was expecting more from this final battle, which is probably why it isn't higher up on my list, you know. Having said that, it's still a pretty badass fight, so it does manage to make its way here. Yeah, I'll admit that the first half of the battle is pretty cool with the T-Rex and Gigantosaurus giving it all in their fight. Of course, this is Rexy from the first Jurassic Park film, so it's not like she's got lively bones or anything. She gets beaten down pretty easily, but is also able to get back up when the Therizinosaurus makes her way to the scene as well. Having a carnivore and herbivore team up against a common enemy was a sweet move, but I wish there was more to their fight than just a finisher move. Like, bro didn't even have the time to understand what was being done by the time he was ended. Oh, wait, bro's supposed to be cis, right? Because all the dinosaurs are made female. Man, I really don't know how they went wrong with this film, especially with the impact the first Pacific Rim movie had made. I guess a lot of it has to do with the fact that the original director didn't return, but even then, the final battle did have a lot of epic visuals to keep us entertained. Seeing the Mega Kaiju taking on the Jaegers could have gone so many ways, and the studio chose to show us the ultimate domination, which I was actually impressed by. I mean, the thing was able to make 4 gigantic robots get blown away simply by punching the road, so he clearly won the battle of the flexes. His demolition job that followed really spooked the daylights out of the audience, but all we needed was some dramatic plot armor and complete ignorance of the law of physics to allow Jake and the good guys to defeat. Man, they really risked it all with that one move. Imagine if it didn't work. Actually, we probably would have got a sequel to it. The director may have reasoned that Godzilla was tired after fighting King Kong and spamming his atomic breath everywhere, especially when he drilled that hole towards the Hollow Earth, but even then, I'd say the fight between Godzilla and Mecha Godzilla was pretty one-sided. Sure, if this was nuclear Godzilla, then he would have won the fight before it even started, but that wasn't the case, which is why we got to see him getting dominated unlike any other time in the Monsterverse. There's no mistaking the fact that the villain was the superior fighter here, but I liked his monster design quite a bit. I also love that Mechagodzilla's roar as it was climbing out of the mountain is actually something of a mechanized King Ghidorah roar. It's subtle, but it really drives home the fact that Ghidorah is in control.
It's time to stop, okay?
I guess it makes sense because bro wanted revenge after the way he got totally demolished against Godzilla during their last encounter. Imagine climbing up some mountains and then you see them turn into a couple of stone giants that only want to fight each other for no good reason. Yeah, that's exactly what happens when Bilbo and co decide to cross their paths at night, and that too in the middle of a storm. It serves as the perfect backdrop to the battle, but the funniest thing here is the fact that the intense battle we see between the stone giants is actually supposed to be just casual behaviour for them. Man, I'm not sure how I would have reacted to this, but it was definitely a sight to behold. Eventually, one of the stone giants meets his end by falling down, but I'm sure Bro would have just casually turned into another mountain and pretended as if he didn't get humiliated in front of a bunch of dwarfs and hobbits.
Are true giants! Stone giants!
How can I not mention an underwater monster scene, especially when there's one from the latest Meg film? Look, let's be realistic, nobody watches these movies for the intricate plot, we just want to see giant sharks messing up the place. In this particular scene, the Meg takes on a kraken monster, which is basically a giant octopus, or maybe squid, I'm not too good with seafood. Anyway, the fight's a pretty interesting one because you see the main villain actually helping out one of the heroes.
I call that mercy.
Sure, this is just one of multiple Megs and the main intention was to show the Kraken its place, but a save is also a save. Also, it's made to look like the Meg is struggling and is about to lose, however Bro manages to get back and pull an Uno reverse by totally demolishing the Kraken with nothing more than the brute force of its jaws. I'm pretty sure they would have replaced the ink with blood if this wasn't a PG-13 movie, but it was still a nice little touch. By the time Jurassic Park 3 came out, the only apex predator we knew in the dino world was the T-Rex. There was no other competition that came even remotely close to this massive beast, which is why the producers decided to bring in an even deadlier dinosaur in the Spinosaurus. It was a neat addition, albeit in a subpar movie, and the writers made sure to show the audience how strong this beast was in comparison to their favourite flesh eater. Of course, the T-Rex in this fight looks like a younger version of the actual carnivore, but I suppose this was intentional to allow the audience to speculate if a properly sized Rexy would be able to take down the Spinosaurus. It's a valid point for sure, but I still feel 30 seconds was too less to showcase a fight between such massive dinosaurs. This is yet another entry where the winner claims victory by snapping its opponent's head. Yeah, Spider-Man should really stay away from this video. Well, if you can't beat a giant lizard, then I guess you gotta settle for some dragon bats. We all know that Kong will never stand a chance against Godzilla, no matter how hard he tries or how many weapons he equips himself with.
Oh my god.
However, he's still pretty strong on his own, and we see that in full flow when he takes on the warbats in Hollow Earth. It's a pretty cool sequence because it gives us more context about the world we're entering and the visuals were on point. Of course, there was nothing too aesthetically pleasing about a giant monkey eating a combination of a bat, dragon and snake. However, the fight was impressive after King Kong realised that he shouldn't be underestimating his opponent. With the whole swinging attack, it almost felt as if I was watching a wrestling match. Only difference is that if John Cena was in the scene, then we would have seen Kong swinging wildly at nothing. Now this is the Pacific Rim that we all know and love. Gypsy Danger is a certified badass and his battle against Leatherback was just the first instance of the kind of damage he could cause. The backdrop of the battle was pretty sweet, so I don't know why people keep complaining about the night setting getting in the way of the visuals. I personally feel that it helps add more impact to the overall fight. Anyway, the manner in which Gypsy Danger totally decimated Leatherback was a stamp of authority, but that doesn't mean it was a piece of cake. Bro had to empty the clip to get the job done, and even then, it took a while for the kaiju to realize that he's dead. Luckily, those electromagnetic impulses didn't have any effect on the Jaeger because it was analog. See, this is why you should always put your faith in the older generations. They know how to get stuff done without relying too much on tech.
No pulse.
Anyone who says that the Hulkbuster isn't a giant monster needs to see me face to face. That unit managed to take down the angry green giant with enough power to probably fight him again, so yeah, Veronica totally makes the cut for this list, okay? Now as far as the battle's concerned, I have to say that it was total fan service and was totally worth it. I love the way Tony Stark makes his appearance because this is our first time seeing the Iron Man suit inside another Iron Man suit. Yep, this was an Inception moment and the ensuing encounter was nothing short of spectacular. Personally, my favourite moment was when Iron Man was trying to get the Hulk to go to sleep, but overall, it was a super solid sequence. Both parties gave it their all, and Tony even bought a goddamn building just to make sure that the construction company didn't lose any money. See, now this is the kind of billionaire the world needs.
Go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep.
It doesn't matter who your opponent may be, Rexy is the undisputed queen of the Jurassic Park franchise and will always support her no matter what. Well, I guess maybe not when she's eating humans, but you get what I mean, don't you? So the battle against the Carnotaurus was pretty short and sweet in terms of time taken, but the overall impact was freaking magnificent. It shows that she's still pretty powerful even though she's as old as a grandma by this time. I mean, just look at how our favourite T-Rex roars right after beating the Carnotaurus with just one bite. That's a baller right there, and I'm so glad we got to see her in a dino fight, even if it lasted all of 5 business seconds. Hey, now that I think about it, Rexy's been fighting dinosaurs across all her appearances in the Jurassic World series. Man, I sure hope they're paying her well for this role. She does do all of her own stunts, you know. This was Kong's first entrance in the Monsterverse, but they sure made to represent him as an absolute unit despite his relatively younger age and smaller size. The final battle against the Big Daddy Skullcrawler was a perfect example of it, and yes, I know we could see him struggling for a bit, but it makes sense in his current state as compared to his powers now. If they were able to have a rematch right now, then I'm sure King Kong would have been able to wreck the Skullcrawler with ease. I mean, the dude's fighting Godzilla and his Mecha version nowadays, so I'm pretty sure a puny lizard wouldn't be too much hassle to take on. Also, I'm aware that Bro got some assistance from the humans, but come on, these actors are paid to appear on set to play these characters, so it should only be fair for them to put in some of the work. The finisher move was brutal, as well as confusing, because how the heck did Brie Larson survive being inside Kong's fist while he was ripping out a monster lizard's tongue? Did she awaken her Captain Marvel powers? Actually, no, I don't think King Kong would have saved her in that case. This was the first time we got to see both Godzilla and King Ghidorah going at each other, and I'd say that it was pretty neat for an incomplete encounter. You got everything you needed to see with Godzilla smacking down one of Ghidorah's heads into the ice and then getting countered by the dragon's electric blast. It was a short battle, and from the looks of it, Ghidorah did look like he had the upper hand, but Godzilla wasn't down and out for the count, so we don't know what would have happened if they continued. After all, this was before Ghidorah charged himself up with the electrical boost, so I'm going to call it a draw. Once again, it's the humans who kept getting in the way for no rhyme or reason. Like, just get out of the way, damn it! Do you really want to get in the middle of 2 alpha titans fighting each other? It's time to kick off our top 10, and I felt that it would only be appropriate to have the first film of the Monsterverse to be featured in it. If you look at the kind of monsters Godzilla has to deal with nowadays, it'll make the mutos look like some side pieces. However, they were important villains to have in the beginning of the franchise, as they helped warm up the King of Monsters for the bigger fights. I mean, Bro went straight for Ghidorah after defeating these two, so you could say he at least had some fighting practice beforehand. As far as the actual fight is concerned, I'll continue to highlight the tail whip Godzilla used on the male Muto because that's straight out of a Pokemon battle. And of course, the final atomic breath on the female Muto was simply mwah! First of all, I just want to say that I'm so glad this isn't the lowest grossing film of the MCU anymore. I suppose the Marvels did manage to do one good thing after all.
I mean, it's alright, like...
Anyway, The Incredible Hulk deserves a lot more love than it did at the time of its release, and the final battle between the titular angry green giant and an even larger abomination should be more than enough to justify my statement. The fight was brutal, savage, and had no shortage of strength flexing. Even the ending of the battle, which was highlighted by Hulk literally clapping away an explosion, was a classy demonstration which focused on brute strength as well as strategy. See, our boy Bruce managed to teach his angry alter ego a thing or two about planning and execution. If you're a King Kong fan, then I think it's safe to say that you can give him as many axes and plot armor as you want, but bro's never going to be able to match the force of nature that is Godzilla. The Battle of Hong Kong was a clear indication of the difference in their powers, and the fact that Godzilla only grows stronger due to his evolution over time proves that no one can challenge the king of the monsters. Round 1 was just Godzilla messing around with Kong, trying to incinerate him with his atomic blast. After he realized that Kong's a little bit more skilled than an overgrown monkey, bro went croc mode and absolutely demolished him without mercy. You can come at me in the comments all you want, but keep this in mind. Kong had a battle axe that could absorb atomic breath and use it against his opponent. He got a crazy power up and landed what was easily his most powerful attack on Godzilla. It only took a couple of minutes for him to get back up. However, when Godzilla actually became serious and used one of his many attack forms, Kong tried his best to get up and needed to rest one whole night to get back some sort of functionality. This is easily the most popular scene in the Jurassic World franchise, and the YouTube views on the official video are a clear indicator of the same. We all wanted to see a mega dinosaur battle in this film, and we got what we wanted when Rexy stood up to the Indominus Rex. Sure, she couldn't match such an overpowered beast, especially because of her age, but the difference wasn't by much. All she needed was one velociraptor and the scales tilted considerably in her favour. The Mosasaurus coming in at the very last moment to finish things off was the perfect icing on the cake, and I'm forever grateful that we have this scene to look at whenever we want. Man, this was a tough one to watch. It's one of the few times where you feel so emotionally connected to Godzilla, and it's because of his own vulnerability. He lost everything here when his son was ended by Destoroyah, and even when he was fighting the evil kaiju, his dorsal plates were starting to melt and his atomic energy was leaving his body. However, he knew he had to finish this off, which was why the King of the Monsters proved his title yet again with a devastating series of attacks that eventually destroyed his enemy and gave him some sense of relief. The fact that this scene is almost 20 minutes long only makes the overall impact that much more devastating. Man, it's just one sentimental scene after the other, as we now explore the battle of the Bewilder Beast from How to Train Your Dragon 2. It's a massive fight and lives up to the hype, but the problem is that it wasn't fairly executed, which is why Valka's Beast got the raw end of the bargain. Using mind control wasn't a classy move, but I guess Drago's Bewilder Beast didn't really care for honor in this battle. Overall, it was a high-stakes encounter that ended with a highly emotional loss. Man, I've never felt sorry for a giant beast the way I felt for the white Bewilder Beast. It deserved much better. I mentioned Leatherback earlier, but that kaiju really had nothing on Otachi if you consider how badass and overpowered she was for her category. Gypsy Danger really had to bring out its big guns and swords to get the upper hand, and even then, it barely managed to win by a whisker. Just look at what's being tried here: a giant ship, endless punches, acid breath, demon wings, and a last resort sword that really should have just been the first plan of action. Anyway, this battle is one of the most epic giant monster fights that have come out, and that's saying a lot considering the elite company it's in. Godzilla may have gotten thwarted by Mech Godzilla, but once Kong comes into the picture, it was a whole other tangent. Yes, both the monsters were tired, especially Godzilla, who's really been working far above his pay grade, but even then, the both of them were able to take down Ghidorah's version of a revenge vessel with coordinated teamwork and a lot of roaring. You gotta give props to Godzilla for remembering how Kong managed to use his own atomic breath against him, because it was that one tactic that helped them defeat their robotic opponent. With the success Godzilla Kong has been experiencing worldwide, I can't wait to see what the next installment has in mind. Okay, so the main reason this entry is here because I want to include Nuclear Godzilla totally obliterating Ghidorah like a mosquito, but I also want to highlight how the supporting acts played their part in this matchup. Mothra and Rodan went at it pretty hard, and to see Mothra coming out of that fight on top was very satisfying. Yeah, Rodan kind of got overshadowed after he emerged from the volcanoes, but I'm glad Mothra got the respect she deserved. I was so devastated when she got blasted away by Ghidorah's beam, but hey, her boyfriend more than made up for it when he melted down everything in his path. Oh god, I just reminded myself that Godzilla and Mothra like each other. And not in the PG-13 way. I've mentioned this scene way too many times for me to ignore it on such an important list, and it totally deserves top honors here. Like, come on, King Kong taking on 3 V-Rexes while also protecting his beloved Anne was a flex even other flexes would have to bow down to. The CGI was impeccable, and it proved that the era doesn't really matter as much if you put in the right kind of investment for your visual effects. The dinos attacking Kong and then getting violated proved to be the magnum opus moment of creature feature films at that point in time, and even with all the other films that have come our way in the modern era, it's safe to say that this particular scene still holds up. Hope you like this video. Please subscribe to the TV Regent, and here's another video that I know you're going to enjoy.